Welcome to today's podcast. We'll be discussing the venture mindset, how to make smarter bets and achieve extraordinary growth by Stanford professor Ilya Strebulaev and technology executive Alex Dang. The book provides a framework for decision-making and innovation based on the practices of venture capitalists, VCs. It's fascinating how the authors, a professor and a seasoned executive, came together to write this book. Their story began with a shared passion for wine, leading to conversations about venture capital decision-making. This unusual beginning ultimately led to a collaboration where they combined Strebulaev's academic research with Dang's practical experience, creating a unique blend of theory and practice. Strebulaev's team spent over a decade studying the venture capital world. They surveyed and interviewed over 1,000 VCs, delving into their decision-making processes, sourcing strategies, and portfolio management techniques. They even conducted field experiments, including one where they sent fictitious cold emails to investors to study the potential impact of gender and race on responses. This rigorous approach lends credibility to their arguments. The venture mindset teaches 9 principles that define the venture mindset and how even large companies can adopt the principles to achieve disruptive innovation. These principles act as a roadmap for organizations seeking to adopt a VC-inspired approach to innovation. Throughout the book, the authors weave together these 9 principles to create a comprehensive framework for adopting the venture mindset. They provide numerous examples of how these principles have been successfully applied in both the VC world and in traditional companies. One of the most valuable aspects of the book is its practical focus. The authors provide concrete tips and tools that organizations can use to implement the venture mindset principles. For instance, they suggest using investment memos to document decision-making processes, encourage dissent by assigning devil's advocates, and establish clear criteria for deciding when to double down on a project or quit. And they conclude the book by encouraging readers to embrace the venture mindset, not just in their professional lives, but also in their personal lives. They argue that these principles can be applied to any decision-making context where uncertainty and risk are involved. The outcome of applying the venture mindset are threefold. First, a shifting corporate culture to one that actively embraces experimentation and rapid iteration. Second, democratizing innovation by applying these principles beyond the corporate world, influencing decision-making in government, non-profit organizations, and even individual life choices. And thirdly, redefining success, where an organization develops a greater tolerance for risk and a more resilient approach to pursuing ambitious goals. The venture mindset offers more strengths than weaknesses. Its clarity, practicality, and unique perspective make it a valuable resource. However, its limited scope, reliance on anecdotal evidence, and lack of attention to ethical concerns are notable weaknesses. The venture mindset is a fascinating read for entrepreneurs considering pursuing VC funding and those charged with leading innovation at large, mature organizations. It demonstrates quite vividly the radical difference between VC-backed innovation and how big companies traditionally approach innovation. The venture mindset is a thought-provoking and insightful read for anyone seeking to foster innovation and achieve growth in their organization. By combining rigorous academic research with practical experience, the authors have created a valuable resource for leaders across all industries. So let's dive into today's podcast. As always, please share, like, and subscribe.
All right, are you ready to dig into venture capital? Like, really understand it. We're talking unicorns, big bets, the whole 9 yards. And to guide us, we've got Venture Mindset by Ilya Strebulaev and Alex Dang.
And this isn't just, another business book with the same old advice. This one gets into the minds of the most successful venture capitalists. And get this, it shows how we can use their methods, even if we're not in tech or finance.
You're right. It's definitely got broader appeal than your typical Wall Street read. But before we go full-on deep dive, who are these authors? We've got Strebulaev. He's practically VC royalty. I mean, the guy teaches at Stanford. His venture capital textbook is legendary.
Yeah, and it's not just theory with him. He started the venture capital initiative at Stanford, advises companies, even finds time to be a wine buff. Talk about well-rounded.
Then we've got Alex Stang. Now he's been in the trenches. Amazon, McKinsey, running his own startup. If experience were currency, he'd be a unicorn himself.
What's interesting is this book came from them asking what makes unicorns, well, unicorns. Those companies, Zoom, SpaceX, that hit $1 billion valuation before they even go public.
Right, but why should the average person care about these unicorns?
Because how they get there, it's a blueprint. They face huge uncertainty, tons of risk, and there's a pattern. Strebulaev and Dang call it the venture mindset. And their book, it breaks it down so we can use it too.
So less about getting rich quick, more about thinking differently, no matter what you do.
Exactly. They even looked at Zelle. That's a corporate unicorn. Proof that these ideas, they work even inside big companies.
The first thing that jumped out at me was home runs matter, strikeouts don't. Isn't that kind of backwards? Don't most businesses try to avoid risk?
See, that's the venture mindset in a nutshell. It's all about going for those game-changing wins, even if it means some swings and misses. They use the example of the Post-it note, the office supply.
Wait, the Post-it note was a mistake?
Yep, a total accident. A failed attempt at making a super strong glue. Most companies would have trashed it, but 3M, their culture was different. They embraced accidents, and boom, billion-dollar product.
That's wild. They also talk about when 3M CEO McNerney brought in Six Sigma, right? That's all about efficiency, minimizing errors.
Right, and at first, profits went up, but some argue that it stifled the creativity that made 3M famous. It's a good reminder that we need to be careful about what we're prioritizing. Are we focused on short-term gains or long-term game-changing innovation?
It's like, are you playing it safe or are you swinging for the fences? But how do we even find those home run ideas in the first place?
That's where networking comes in. Thinking beyond your four walls, as the book calls it. Venture capitalists, they're masters of building relationships. They have to be to find the next big thing. They give the example of Cami Samuels. She's a VC focused on healthcare, and she's always connecting with people, doctors, researchers, even patients. She's getting insights from everywhere.
So it's not just attending those fancy industry dinners then.
Exactly. It's about genuine connection. They talk about Pejman Nozad. Went from working at a yogurt shop to a top VC, all through relationships. He's the one who connected Dropbox's founders with Sequoia Capital, one of the biggest names in VC.
Wow, talk about a glow up. Okay, so connections are key. But how do we avoid dismissing good ideas just because they didn't come from our team?
The non-invented here syndrome. They use Xerox PRRs as a cautionary tale. They invented the graphical user interface, the mouse, laser printers, groundbreaking stuff. But Xerox didn't capitalize on it because it wasn't invented in-house.
That's going to be one of the biggest oops moments in business history.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got good ideas flowing in. How do we evaluate them? The book says make decisions fast. Isn't that risky?
It's not about being reckless. It's about having a prepared mind. Think of Alexander Fleming, the guy who discovered penicillin.
Wasn't that a happy accident?
Sort of, but Fleming had spent years studying bacteria, so when he saw that mold on his Petri dish, he knew it was significant. Or, take Steve Jobs. When he visited Xerox PR, he saw the potential in their tech that Xerox itself missed.
Because he was already obsessed with the future of computers.
Exactly. That's the prepared mind. Being so immersed in your field that you can connect the dots quickly and make decisions when you see an opportunity.
So it's not just trusting your gut. It's about backing it up with deep knowledge. So we're prepared, making quick decisions. What's next?
Learning to say no a lot.
Wait, shouldn't we be saying yes to more opportunities?
Not always. Top VCs, they're experts at quickly identifying reasons to say no. It's about focusing time and resources on the best ventures. They have this analogy of a piggy bank auction. You bid on a piggy bank, highest bidder wins, BUT, they have to pay the second highest bid too.
So you can win, but overpay, right?
Exactly. Emotions lead to bad decisions. They also talk about Theranos, the blood testing company. It was a huge scandal, a lot of hype. But some VCs, like GV, they saw the red flags early and dodged a bullet.
So even the pros get it wrong sometimes. Okay, so we're being choosy. But once we find a good opportunity, how do we know it's the right one?
Shift your focus from the idea to the people. Think of horse racing. They always list the horse's name first, right? But in venture capital, it's about the jockey, the team.
So a great team can make even a mediocre idea successful.
They found that 47% of VCs say the team is the most important factor in their decision. They look at Google, Gmail, that wasn't some planned thing. It was an engineer with an idea. Google gave him space to run with it.
Creating a space for those entrepreneurs, those internal innovators.
Right. Even the McDonald's Happy Meal, that came from a franchise owner. She noticed kids struggling with portions and created a solution. Genius.
The Happy Meal, a multi-billion-dollar idea, started with solving a small problem. Who knew? But it makes you think, how do you evaluate a team? I mean, beyond just their resumes.
Charisma. They talk about Alex Rampell, a VC who looks at how well a founder can attract talent. If someone can convince brilliant people to join a risky startup, that says something.
It's that X factor, right? Drawing people in.
Exactly. They tell this story about Rene Casey, a surgeon turned entrepreneur. This guy just had it. His energy, his passion, it attracted top people and investors.
Makes me think of the leaders I've admired. It's rarely just about skills, it's something more. So we've got the team, the vision, what's next?
Embracing failure and iterating based on what you learn.
Wait, should we be aiming for perfection from the start?
The venture mindset says no. Startups are experiments. They're supposed to fail. It's how you learn. The book talks about a minimal viable product or MVP. You get something out there quickly, even if it's not perfect.
So you get feedback, adapt, improve.
Right. They even talk about Amazon's minimum lovable product. Create something people enjoy even in its early stages. It's a good reminder to look at failure differently. It's not the end, it's just feedback.
Easier said than done, but I see what you mean. Now, the book takes a turn we don't often think about. Incentives.
Right, and they start with this guy, Zacharias Stagnario, a merchant from the 13th century. He used something called colleganza. Basically, investors funded his voyages, and they'd share the profits. But if the ship sank, they lost everything.
High stakes. Sounds a bit like venture capital today.
That's the point. Both rely on high risk, high reward. Everyone's motivated to go for it because they share in the win. But traditional companies, they often punish failure.
And that can stifle creativity.
Totally. They even use this funny example about Hanoi's rat problem. The French offered a bounty for dead rats, right? Well, people started breeding rats just to collect.
Oh no, talk about unintended consequences. Okay, so incentives matter. But one thing that seems crucial in venture capital is patience. These investments, they don't pay off overnight, right?
Absolutely. We're talking 5-10 years, sometimes even longer. Think about Jeff Bezos. Amazon was losing money for years.
He was playing the long game, though, and it paid off. Big time.
They tell this story of a bank CEO who laughed at the idea of 10-year plans. It's that short-term thinking that they're challenging us to overcome. What's your long-term bet? What are you willing to invest in, even if you don't see results immediately?
That's a powerful question. And a perfect place to pause for now. We've covered a lot, from embracing failure to thinking long-term. But trust me, there's so much more to unpack in venture mindset.
You know, going back to what we were discussing, one of the things that really struck me about venture mindset is how they connect those VC principles, the ones that build unicorns, to the corporate world. They're saying anyone can use them.
Right, like it's not just about being in Silicon Valley, it's a way of thinking.
Exactly. Leading a small team or a huge company, the challenges are the same. Uncertainty, limited resources, making decisions with what you've got.
So how do we take those big, bold VC moves and make them work in a more traditional company?
They call it a venture-like approach, basically making space to experiment, not freaking out when things fail, and focusing on the long game.
So less about hitting quarterly targets, more about building something great.
Exactly. Google, Amazon, John Deere, they're all doing it. They've got these internal innovation teams, clear goals, and they reward smart risks, even if they don't always work out.
It's like they're changing the company culture, not just adding a new strategy.
Right on. Now, one thing that's really interesting, especially for those in charge, is how the venture mindset tackles decision-making, making fast decisions, even with limited information.
That's scary. Most companies want tons of data before making a move.
It's not about being reckless, though. Strebulaev and Deng are clear about that. It's about recognizing that in today's world, waiting for perfect information means missing out.
So how do I say we can make those quick, good decisions?
They say it comes from really knowing your stuff, spotting patterns, that gut feeling you develop from experience.
So trusting your gut, but only after you've done your homework.
Exactly. Like those VCs deciding on investments, they might only have a presentation, a few meetings, and some market data.
That's not a lot to go on.
Right. But they've seen so many pitches, they've honed their instincts, they can tell what works, what doesn't.
How do we develop that kind of intuition, that ability to read a situation quickly?
They say it's knowing your industry inside and out and always seeking new information. Read everything, talk to experts, be a sponge.
Constantly learning like you're back in school, but about your job or industry.
Yes. But even intuition can be wrong. It's about finding that balance, using data, but also trusting your gut.
Right. Don't ignore red flags just because you've got a good feeling.
Yeah.
Speaking of balance, the book also talks about speed and patience.
Right. It's like you got to sprint when you need to, but also be ready for a marathon.
Because sometimes those venture capital bets take years to pay off.
Like Amazon. Unprofitable for years, but look at them now.
Bezos was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers.
They even tell this story of a CEO who laughed at the idea of a 10-year plan. Short-term thinking at its finest. So what's your long-term bet? What are you playing for?
Deep stuff. And it's not just about the finish line. It's about who you have with you.
Right.
The team is crucial.
Huge. And they address this misconception that venture capital is all about the money. Sure, profits matter, but
more than that.
the best VCs, they're looking for companies solving big problems, making a difference. Clean energy, healthcare, education. They want to change the world.
So it's about impact, not just profit.
Right. They argue that venture capital done right can boost the economy, create jobs. It's a win-win. Speaking of winning, they keep coming back to this prepared mind idea. What does that really mean?
It sounds like it's about more than just reading a few books.
It's about being a lifelong student, always learning, growing your understanding of the world. Read everything, go to conferences, even if they're not directly related to your work. Talk to experts, ask questions, be curious.
Never stop learning, basically.
Exactly. Get out of your comfort zone, try new things, and never stop asking why. Now, I know many people listening are probably thinking, this is great, but how do I actually use this venture mindset? Especially when I'm facing uncertainty.
It's one thing to read about it and another to actually apply it.
Right. They say first, be crystal clear about your goals. What are you trying to achieve? Then work backward. Figure out what it'll take to get there.
So have a destination in mind before you plan the journey.
Yes. Gather information, but don't get stuck overanalyzing. At some point, you got to trust your gut.
There's that intuition again.
It's key, but don't be afraid to challenge your assumptions. Use data. Be willing to change your mind. Adapt.
Flexibility is key, especially in today's world.
They also recommend having a framework for decisions, specific criteria for evaluating opportunities.
So you're not starting from scratch every time.
Right. Now, there's this concept they talk about making the pie bigger. Love this one. They say that a lot of companies, they're stuck dividing up a fixed pie, creating competition.
Right. It's like, if I win, you lose.
The venture mindset says, let's make the whole pie bigger. Create more value for everyone.
So everyone wins.
Exactly. Profit sharing, employee ownership, collaboration. It's about working together, not against each other.
That's a refreshing way to look at it. But they're clear that these principles, they're not just for the corporate world.
Right. They say this mindset can be applied to anything. Your career, relationships, personal goals.
It's about having a growth mindset, believing you can achieve anything you set your mind to.
Exactly. Pushing your boundaries, taking smart risks, going for something bigger.
Embracing that venture mindset. But that's easier said than done. What about the fear of failure? That holds so many people back.
It's a real thing. But they argue that fear can stop us from reaching our full potential.
So how do we deal with it?
They say, change how you view failure. Don't see it as a defeat. See it as a chance to learn and grow. Surround yourself with supportive people, people who have your back.
It's about having that I can do this attitude, even when things get tough.
Yes. Break down big goals into smaller steps. Celebrate those wins. And be patient. Success takes time. Now, let's talk about something that's everywhere. Uncertainty. It can be paralyzing.
Oh, absolutely. That feeling of, what if I make the wrong choice? It can stop you in your tracks.
They say gather information, but don't drown in it. At some point, you just got to make a decision.
Be okay with not knowing everything, right?
Right. And you can always adjust as you go. Be flexible and focus on what you can control.
Don't get caught up in things you can't change.
Exactly. And approach challenges with optimism. Believe in yourself, have that can-do attitude. Speaking of which, they also talk about building a strong team.
You can't do everything on your own, right?
Right. And that goes for life, not just work.
So how do we build those amazing teams?
It's more than just skills. Find people who share your values, who are passionate about the same things, and who bring different strengths to the table.
So diversity is key.
Yes. And create a culture where everyone feels valued, respected, heard.
Where everyone feels safe to share their ideas.
Yes. Celebrate successes together. Build genuine connections. It's not just about work. It's about building something bigger. Now, for the entrepreneurs listening, they have great advice about navigating venture capital.
That world can seem really intimidating.
They break it down, explaining the different types of firms, how the investment process works, what those VCs are looking for.
Like a crash course in VC 101.
Exactly. They talk about building relationships with VCs, tailoring your pitch, understanding their goals, but they also emphasize company culture.
Right. Having a strong culture is important, even if you're not looking for funding.
Totally. It attracts and keeps top talent, helps you innovate, creates a better work environment.
How do you build that kind of culture, though? It seems kind of vague.
It starts with your values. What do you stand for? Communicate them clearly. Hire people who embody them.
Finding those people who are a good fit, not just for the job, but for your company's personality.
Exactly. And create opportunities for your team to connect, celebrate wins together, have some fun. It makes a huge difference. Another thing that's great is they walk the walk. They talk about giving back to the community.
They see as part of success, right?
Yeah. Supporting charities, mentoring, using your skills to make a difference.
Everyone has something to offer.
Exactly. Even small acts of kindness can make a difference. They also talk about something we all struggle with, work-life balance. It's hard.
Especially these days when everyone's always on.
They get it. They say, make time for yourself, your family, your passions, set boundaries, prioritize, delegate if you can, and don't be afraid to disconnect.
Unplug and recharge.
Yes. Exercise, eat well, sleep enough, and don't ignore stress. Ask for help if you need it. Success isn't just about work, it's about living a happy, fulfilling life.
Finding that sweet spot, right?
Absolutely. One of their biggest pieces of advice is to stay ahead of the curve. The world's changing fast, you got to keep learning.
That whole adapt or die thing, but less dramatic.
Right. Read industry news, go to conferences, talk to people, try new technologies. Be curious, question everything, and be open to new ideas.
Don't just predict the future, create it.
Love that. And something else they highlight is the power of building a strong network.
It's all about who you know, right?
It's more than that. It's about building genuine relationships with people who can support you, challenge you, and help you grow. Go to events, join organizations, connect with people online.
Don't be shy.
Exactly. Help others. Be generous with your time and connections. Nurture those relationships. Stay in touch. They're valuable.
Your network is your net worth.
Right. A strong network can open so many doors. Now, we can't talk about the venture mindset without talking about risk. It's scary, but...
You got to take risks to see rewards.
They say risk is a part of life, but you can manage it. Do your research, understand the downsides, have a plan. Start small, test your ideas, and adjust as you go.
Sometimes the biggest risk is not taking any risks.
They also talk about the importance of having a clear vision. What do you want to accomplish? What mark do you want to leave on the world?
What gets you up in the morning?
Exactly. Define it, write it down, share it, and let it guide your decisions.
Have that unwavering belief in yourself and what you're working towards.
And build a strong reputation. That's huge.
Your word is your bond, right?
More than that, it's one of your most valuable assets. Be honest, ethical, deliver on your promises, treat people right. Your reputation precedes you, so make it count.
It's about trust and credibility. Those are hard to earn and easy to lose. Speaking of valuable, they talk a lot about being a lifelong learner.
Absolutely. If you're not learning, you're falling behind.
So how do we keep that student mentality throughout our careers?
Read, attend workshops, take online courses, be curious. Find mentors. Don't be afraid to make mistakes and learn from them.
Mistakes are just lessons in disguise.
Right. Challenge yourself to learn something new every day. Now, another thing they emphasize is communication. Seems obvious, but...
It's more than just talking, right?
It's about connecting, influencing, building relationships. Be clear, concise, listen actively. Practice makes perfect.
Communication is a skill you can always improve.
And be yourself. People can spot a fake. Build trust by being genuine. Okay, last but not least, leadership.
Ah, the L word. They seem to have a very specific definition of what makes a good leader.
They say it's about inspiring people, creating a vision, and empowering your team.
How do you do that, though, inspiring others?
Yeah.
It seems like a tall order.
They say be decisive, communicate clearly, build strong relationships, lead by example, be humble, be willing to learn from anyone. And remember, it's not about power, it's about serving others and making a difference. It's funny how we're conditioned to avoid failure at all costs.
Right.
Like it's this awful thing.
But this book, it flips the script. We're saying we need to embrace failure, almost celebrate it.
They even call it being a failure champion. It's like, what can we learn from this? Not how do we hide it? Exactly. They talk about having these failure retrospectives where teams get together and dissect what went wrong. No blame, just learning.
So it becomes this valuable data point, not a black mark.
Right. And it's not just about being okay with failure. It's about encouraging experimentation. The more you try, the more you learn, even if you stumble along the way.
Of course, it's not about being reckless.
Right. Calculated risks. And that's where experience and knowledge come in. The more you know, the better you are at assessing those risks.
Speaking of knowledge, they keep hammering home that prepared mind concept.
It's crucial, and one of the best ways to develop that is by diversifying your networks. Talk to people outside your usual circles.
Get out of that echo chamber, right?
Exactly. They give examples of VCs who found amazing opportunities by connecting with people they'd never normally meet. Academics, people from completely different industries.
It's like cross-pollination of ideas.
Exactly. So it makes you think, who am I surrounding myself with? Am I seeking out diverse perspectives or sticking to what's comfortable?
It's a good question to ask yourself. Now, one analogy they used that really stuck with me was thinking like a poker player.
Oh, I loved that one because it highlights the strategic thinking involved in both venture capital and, well, life.
Assessing your hand, knowing when to hold them, knowing when to fold them.
Exactly. You're making decisions based on incomplete information, weighing potential risks and rewards, just like in business or in life.
And accepting that you won't win every hand. Sometimes you just got to cut your losses and move on.
Which can be tough, but it's a crucial skill. Now, they also dove into some fascinating historical stuff, like the concept of Kalaganza.
Yeah, that was new to me. What was it, like a 16th century investment club?
Basically, merchants pooling their money to fund risky voyages. High risk, high reward.
And they were literally risking it all, right? If the ship went down, that was it?
Exactly. But the potential payoff, if they were successful, was huge. And they see a direct link between that and modern venture capital.
It's about aligning incentives, having skin in the game.
Right. Everyone's motivated to succeed because they share in the upside. And they contrast that with traditional corporations where it's often safer to play it safe.
Because failure is punished, not seen as a learning opportunity.
Exactly. And that can stifle innovation. They're advocating for a culture where calculated risks are encouraged, where people feel empowered to experiment.
And if things don't work out, you dust yourself off, figure out what went wrong, and try again.
That's the venture mindset in action. It's about having that resilience, that persistence, that belief that you can achieve anything you set your mind to.
It's inspiring and a little daunting, to be honest.
It is. But they offer so many practical tools and strategies for cultivating that mindset. It's not just about some innate quality you either have or you don't.
It's about shifting your perspective, changing your approach to risk, to failure, to learning.
And surrounding yourself with the right people, building that support network that can help you navigate the inevitable ups and downs.
Because it's not going to be easy, but the potential payoff, both personally and professionally, can be huge.
Exactly. It's about pushing your boundaries, embracing the unknown, and never giving up on those big, audacious goals.
Venture mindset. It's a call to action, a challenge to think bigger, to dream bigger, to be bolder in our pursuits.
And to remember that we're all capable of achieving remarkable things if we're willing to step outside our comfort zones and embrace the venture mindset.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's been a fascinating deep dive into the world of venture capital and beyond.
Absolutely. I'm walking away with so many new insights and a renewed sense of inspiration.
Me too. This is definitely a book I'll be revisiting, and I highly recommend our listeners do the same.
And who knows, maybe it'll spark that next big idea, that project you've been putting off, or that leap of faith you've been too afraid to take.
So to our listeners, what's your next move? What's your long-term bet?
We'd love to hear your thoughts.